I wanted to quickly go over what the set is and kind of explain it because if you've never experienced it or don't have it explained to you, I think it can be kind of confusing. So, SET stands for Student Environment Task Tool. It was created by Joy Zabala, and you can go to joyzabala.com and read up more about on the set. But the set is a structured problem solving model. So that's really what it is it's a framework for problem solving, and it should be done as a team. It should not be done by just one person. I find that it's best to have everybody in person or at least online together, and having somebody facilitate the set that is not necessarily on the team. It may be a fringe person on the team, but if you have somebody from the outside do the facilitation, it just allows everybody involved to be able to be participants in it. And so I just find that that's really helpful. You should be able to do it in about an hour. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but I think an hour, 45 minutes to an hour is a really good time period to plan it. So, what you're going to do first is you're going to talk about the student. And when this is done, it should be done so that everybody can see what is being written. And the point of that is then there's a shared visual so that if somebody says, well, I think the student needs this, they don't have to question whether or not they were heard. Did somebody write it down? Did they not write it down? Everybody sees it. So this can be done on a whiteboard. It can be done via a Google Doc, and everyone has access to that, whatever really is easiest for you. So this is just an example of me just going off the top of my head and making up a student who would need a communication system. So as you go through this, you would first talk about the student, and I'm going to say 5 to 10 minutes, and you're going to talk about what are the things about the student that makes them unique. And I put some different things down. The student's echolalic. They have a few words that they do use. They love Disney. They're easily frustrated when communication breaks down. Use icons to make snack requests. They're in the class 50% of the time in gen ed. So I just listed those things. So again, they're not really strengths or weaknesses. They're just things to remember about the student. It could be something about the student's sensory abilities. It could be about the student's ability to point or the student's love of Disney songs. Maybe the student is a Gestalt language processor. So they're using little snippets from Disney movies to respond to things instead of actually coming up with their own individual phrases. So, what are just those things about a student that people need to remember and keep in mind? I one time had a student that hated the word good job. So that was something we needed to make sure that everybody knew, because when you said good job to the student, it set them off. So, just what are those things unique to the student? Then you're going to jump in and talk about the environment. And when we're talking about communication, the environment is everywhere. So I don't spend a lot of time on environment. I say 5 to 10 minutes on here. I'm going to say probably closer to five, but just what are those things in the environments that need to be just kind of remembered? So maybe in the home, the parents are very supportive. They use visuals. They the student to therapy. What are those different things? Maybe the student goes to therapy, and when they're in the clinic, they are using a certain communication device. So that's something just to keep in mind. They have para support when they're at school. So just kind of what are those things in the environment that you need to keep in mind. Then the bulk of your time is going to be spent on tasks and tools. Tasks I also talk about as being skills. So, what are the tasks or skills that need to be increased? So, in the situation of many of the students who need AAC devices, they already have maybe abilities to request, but really one of the things we're wanting to do is increase their functions of language. So, we want to have more. Them to use communication for more than just being a requester. So we want to add commenting, we want to add questioning, we want to add maybe age appropriate or appropriate negation. Instead of throwing themselves on the floor having a tantrum, we want the child to be able to say no or stop. People respond to that, understand that, and then therefore we don't have some of maybe of the negative behaviors. So on here I have increased functions, and then I went ahead and had some that the team maybe found were going to be useful. Use to 2 to 3 word phrases. Maybe the student is doing single words and we want to increase that. So, kind of increasing the MLU idea. And then maybe the student is hyperlexic or really enjoys writing. So, we want to make sure that the student is doing some writing. Or maybe the student isn't writing and we want to focus on that. So, when you're looking at the tasks, what you're really going to be doing is looking at what are the holes in the current system. So, what is the hole in communication that is kind of getting in the way of the student being able to do what they need to do? Then, from that, you are going to pick 1 to 3 of them, kind of depending on what you're focusing on. Again, I only had 3 really listed here. So, I would say maybe we would pick 1 or 2 of them because this is where you're going to really do the bulk of your data collection. So I note on here that if you have a lot of things listed, you're really going to want to narrow it down. So here's my example. If the area is functions of language, the evaluation question that you would come up with would be something like this. What system will allow the student to increase the number of functions of language used to at least 3 different functions in a week? That's your question. So that's what you're going to take data on. So what you're going to want to do is start with what is the data right now on the different functions of language? How many is the student using? Just do a simple data sheet of that was a comment, that was a question, that was a response, that was a request, whatever you determine. It could be that you're only going to target 2 or 3 of them because that's just what's most going to really meet what the student needs. So you're going to collect data on that before you put any system in place or with whatever system they currently have. So kind of like as soon as you have this meeting, look at the data you already have. If you need to collect new, collect some new, and that's going to be your baseline. So what's your starting point? Then you're going to put a tool in place. So we're going to now start talking about tools. So we've talked about the tasks. So we have identified that we need to increase the functions of language. The first thing you're going to do when we're talking about tools is talk about the features of a tool. We are not going to talk about a specific tool. We're not going to talk about Proloquo or LAMP or TouchChat or PEX or anything else. We're just going to talk about the features or things within those systems. So this is brainstorming initially. And when you brainstorm, there is zero judgment. So you can't say, well, that's not going to work. Okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Right now we're just going to brainstorm, and what you're going to brainstorm is what are the things that a system needs to be able to do. So for this student, we want voice output. We want to be able to add pictures because the student loves his peers, and we want to add pictures of the peers. We want to add information about favorite things. The student has favorite things, loves dinosaurs, and is real specific. It can't just be dinosaur, but it has to be the different names of dinosaurs. We need a triceratops, and we need a that's all the only one I know. So we want to be able to add some of that information. We want to make sure we have a strong core vocabulary in our system. We also are acknowledging that, hey, fringe vocabulary, those extra words that are not really considered core, we're going to need more of those because of how the student communicates now. We want to make sure we have some information on academic topics because the student is in the classroom at least 50% of the time. We want the student to have access to the keyboard because, again, the student likes to write or we're focusing on writing or something, but we do want to make sure we have access to a keyboard. We want ease in making sentences or putting together more than one word at a time. We do want to acknowledge that a familiar motor pattern is going to be really something we want to consider and be thinking about. And color coding we felt was really important as a group because that was going to be helpful not only to the student, but to the other people around the student who are using the device with him to be able to incorporate that in what they're doing. So after you've brainstormed the features, and again, we haven't talked any specific system, you're going to go through, and now you're going to do what I call judgment. You're going to go through and maybe cross things off that that you're like, oh, we really don't need that. Maybe color coding, not as important as we thought we wanted. Cross it off. Or maybe you now are starting to go, okay, well, which system has these things? And so now you're going to start throwing out some specific system names after you've done that brainstorming. And then from there, the team is going to agree on, okay, this system is the one that has the most features. So we've done what's called a feature match, the most features that the team has identified that the student needs in order to do the task that you have selected as the important thing to do. So if we are wanting to increase our functions of language, we are going to look for a student that has the ability to have lots of functions of language. And so from there, you're going to create a plan now on what you're going to do for the evaluation. When are you going to start it? Who's going to get the system? What data are you going to take? How often are you going to take data? And how long is the evaluation going to be, and when are you going to come back together as a group. So that is the SET in a nutshell. I hope that is helpful in describing it and explaining it, but the biggest thing to remember about the SET is it is a structured framework for problem solving, and that's really what you want to do. And when you get to tools, initially you're not going specific device focus, you are going feature. What do we need the system to do? We need the system to do XYZ. And if we can find a system that does XYZ, the team feels that you will have the best ability to match what is the task you've identified or the skill that you've identified that you're going to be taking data on that the student needs to improve and increase. So I hope that's helpful. And again, that's why Joy Zabala, check out her website, joyzabala.com, for more information about the SET.